Okay. So, Carla, good to see you again.
Good to
Zara,
see
good
you
to see
too.
you. Tom, thank you all for coming. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight if we can. So this night tonight is the 7th of our 8 sessions, and next week will be the 8th. So I'd like to wrap up this 9 yanas and be able to move on to our next 8 weeks and so on, which will be coming in August. So does anybody have any questions or comments you want to raise before we get started with our opening prayers? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just do short opening prayers tonight, if you don't mind. So we go to page 5 in our prayer book, the short refuge prayer, and we'll do the 4 immeasurables. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang socho ke dun la, Changju bardu dagni kapsu chi, dagi jinso ki pe sonam gi, jola penshir sangye ju pa sho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she dewa dang dewe gerdang dempar jorchi. Dognal dang donal gi gu dang drel wa jorchi. Dognal me pe de wa dang mi drel wa jorchi. Ne ring drag dang ni dang drel wei tang nam la ne pa jorchi. Okay, thank you. So we've been talking about the 9 yanas, and the point of introducing the 9 yanas to you is a little bit more of an advanced, discussion, more advanced than we normally would do with Buddhism 101. But we had a number of people who've been with us for quite a number of turns of the cycle of Buddhism 101, who were interested in something a little bit more advanced. So we thought it was a good time to do that. And lo and behold, we got some new people joining us in mid-session, which is great, which is fine. And we're going to get back to the basics in the next session. But nevertheless, so the reason why we were doing this, the point of introducing the 9 yanas, was to bring an awareness to your awareness that there is this continuity. There is this continuity of learning, of becoming a disciple, becoming a teacher, becoming a disciple, and so on. And we go through this through lifetimes. And through understanding these yanas, these 9 yanas, as we've been talking about, it's like going through the periods of these lifetimes. And we've had many, many, many lifetimes. So what that means is we've been born many times and we've died many times. Now, who has died and who has been born was not Carla, was not Hatley, or was not Gary, or was not Lance. We have this one life, but it's the human experience that we all share. And that's what we're talking about in this continuum. And if we allow ourselves the ability to be able to rise above our own personal ego, our own attachment to who we are, and just experience this transpersonal human experience, then we begin to recognize all these different lives as being our lives. We can relate to someone who lived in 1850 or 1760 or back 2,600 years ago or 1,000 years ago. We can begin to understand what those people were going through, because we're going through very similar things. We're wearing different clothes, we're living in different houses and so on. We may have different jobs, but the emotions are the same. And the experiences that we go through are the same. And that's what we're trying to recognize. And that the way in which we process that has different levels to it. So we're trying to expose these 9 yanas. The 9 yanas are the 9 vehicles, are different ways, these different levels in being able to experience and process what it is to be a human being. So, so we call this the Tantra. The Tantra is the continuum of being a sentient being, and in particular, a human being. The sutras are more like a doctrinal way of understanding the academics of what it is to be a human being. But the Tantra is more like the method or the practice of being in that continuum, and the way in which we use those teachings, those academics, to be able to further our life, to continue our life, and not be stuck at a particular level, but to be able to go to the next level, and then to go to the next level of that, and so on. So being able to recognize that there are levels, and that we are controlling, we are guiding ourselves to get to those levels. Of course, we have teachers, we have books, we have different ways and to help us to do that. But ultimately, we're the ones who are affecting those changes and so on. So being familiar with it is important, knowing that we can do it, having permission to do it, and knowing what kind of result you might be looking for. What's going to be, if I do this, that, and the other thing, what's going to happen and so on. So the 9 yanas help us to do that. So we begin in the very basic yana of the Vinaya, the teachings, the rigid teachings of the instructions, what we can do, what we can't do, things like that. And then we get into the Mahayana, we get into the middle way, where we learn about the transcendental. We experience the transcendental because our meditations now take on a more of a transcendence, in that we see that there are different lives, that there are different people, and that we are doing things for the benefit of others, not just ourselves. And the Vinaya level, at the Hinayana level, we're doing things selfishly for our own liberation. But in the Mahayana level, we're doing things now for the benefit of others. So, and so we're developing our critical thinking. we're beginning to look at things and determine what is being selfish, and see how insidious selfishness can be. And that when we think we're doing things for other beings and everything, but we're same time developing a pridefulness that that's what we're doing. And as a result, we're being selfish. So, so the Mahayana level, the middle way, points these things out to us, points out what it is to be a bodhisattva. So as we were just talking about a few minutes ago, the 37 practices of the bodhisattva, or the ways of the bodhisattva by Shantideva, points out, what it is to be a bodhisattva. Now, we may not be at that level of being a bodhisattva, but we're trying to get there. So having a notion or having understanding of what that perfection is like guides us, allows us to move forward. And if we make mistakes, we can forgive ourselves. We can kind of circle back and we can fix the mistakes and so on. And we can continue our lives in a more perfect way and so on. So the middle way, the Mahayana, helps us to do that. Then when we get into the Vajrayana is the Tantra, is also called the Tantrayana. This is the continuum vehicle, or Vajrayana, the indestructible vehicle, or the Mantrayana. The Mantrayana is the protection vehicle. Here we're learning the wisdom, we're gaining the wisdom because we're trying these different things at the Mahayana level. And as we do that, we begin to create this base of knowledge, of experience. And that experience becomes our wisdom base. And so, when you talk to somebody about something and you want a wise person's, point of view, you want them to have the experience of being there themselves, of having been there themselves and have failed themselves, and be able to understand what it was that caused the failures and how to correct those failures and so on. Because as we go through and we do our failures, we want somebody who has the compassion of understanding, what it is to have failed, and then what it is to have been able to overcome those failures and become stable in their realizations and so on. So the Vajrayana, that Tantrayana, Mantrayana, is the wisdom path of building up that body of knowledge, that body of experience, that body of wisdom on which that is our buoyancy within all of this ocean of suffering, because we're still in this ocean of suffering, but we're trying to remain in this nirvana, which is like being buoyant above the surface of the water, of the ocean of suffering. So we realize that in this Vajrayana that we go through these birth, death experiences, and that every meditation is a rehearsal for birth and death. But it's more than just a rehearsal. It becomes the way in which we change. That when we enter into a meditation, that we're not going to be the same as we were when we entered into it. When we come out of that meditation, we may have experienced something, had a thought about something, realized something, had an aha moment or something like that, that now forever changes us. So in that way, we're reborn. So we're now, we have the same name, we have the same body, but our inner realization is maybe brighter, is richer, is more critical and understanding that we're responsible for our happiness and for our suffering. So we're doing all this through our body, our speech, and our mind. So our ordinary body, our ordinary speech, our ordinary body ordinary mind becomes purified. We say that this is our impure body, speech, and mind. But as we go through these processes, go through this wisdom, that we become more and more purified, the purification. So our body, speech, and mind becomes more as the awakened one, as the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and so on. So this wisdom path of the Vajrayana, which comes from the direct path of the immediacy of the meditations that we're going through, that we're learning in the Mahayana, as a bodhisattva and so on, and is going through this gradual method of trial and error and so on like that. So there is this method path that is being utilized by all of this. So all of this is all part of the 9 yanas, the gradual path, this method path, the immediate path where we get instructions from our teacher, we get instructions from books that we may read, we get the immediacy and the directness of the words that they are saying, and we might have those aha moments and so on. And then we enter into this, what we call this sequential space of reality, of realization, of being free, that time now just goes away. And that being able to recognize the life of human beings who lived 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, as being beings just like now, and also being like what will be in the future, all becomes interlocked with each other, all becomes part of the same thing. So time just melts away. And the same thing with location, where we are, whether we're living in whatever town you're living in, whatever nation you're living in, whatever kind of a body you are, and so on like that. All of that is transmutable, all of that, and it becomes all just one thing. It doesn't matter where we are. And then we can take that, if we really get into our meditations and we start blasting off out of this solar system and start, having these experiences of being into what we might call this universe and so on, then we really come back to this earth. We really see how limited we've kept ourselves, because when we get out into that physical space of the universe and see all these other form bodies and so on, and seeing them all in the same light as the way we see human beings and other sentient beings on this planet, we begin to say that it's all the same. We're all made up of the same stuff. So, just to, as we progress along, hopefully everybody here is going to become a Buddhist practitioner. And not that the Buddhism excludes you from anything else. It's being awakened. It's being awakened. And we have our terms that we use for it, but those terms, we shouldn't get hung up on the terms and think that they are exclusive terms, because we could look at this as Christ, we could look at this as God, we could look at this as Brahma, as a Hindu, we could look at this as Yahweh. There's all these different traditions have their terms in being able to explain all these experiences that we're learning about in the Buddhism. So in doing this, I'm here to help to introduce you, for the most part, to some of these things, but I'm not going to be your only teacher. There's going to be lots of teachers, and to open yourself up to that. we talk about that there's a circle that we go around, and we keep repeating the circle, because as we repeat the circle, we're refining those things that we learn. And then as we refine them, the circle kind of gets tighter. It gets more like a spiral. The circle that was going round and round is going round and round, but it's going up and it's getting tighter. The circles are getting closer together, and you don't spend as much time going around. They're quicker and so on. So we find that our progress along the path of being a bodhisattva, being an enlightened person, is like a spiral. So we're doing that. So as we do that, we meet better teachers. We meet more direct teachers, more inspired teachers, more realized teachers, and so on. So we have to allow ourselves to be open to that and realize that the way in which we are introducing things may be coarse to some people's minds, to other people's ways of describing this further along that spiral. They may say, oh, well, that's a very broad way of looking at it. That's a very coarse way of looking at it. But for the time being, it's helping us to make some connections to these ideas and so on. Then as we go along and we're refining that, we find that, oh, it doesn't mean all of that broadness. It can mean something a little bit tighter and so on. So we have to be open to that and not think that, oh, that teacher was a lousy teacher because they didn't teach me about this to begin with. But the fact is, we're not ready for it in the beginning. If we got the teachings that are the most, direct teachings, it would just be going over our heads. We just wouldn't understand what it means. So we have to go through this process. So we're allowing for introspection. We're allowing for growth. We're allowing for this cyclic path to awakening and to stabilization. We may have a realization, we may have an aha moment, but as quickly as that aha moment comes like a finger snap, that's how quickly it can go. It's not stable. So by doing these things over and over again, engaging these things over and over again, stabilization comes slowly, slowly, slowly comes and comes. And then that stabilization, we find that we reach a ceiling, but then we're able to penetrate that ceiling only to find that now that's my floor. And there's a whole new room that I'm in now, with a whole new ceiling and other new walls and so on. And then at some point, you're able to penetrate that ceiling and go on to another and so on like that. So it's a progression. That's the gradual path. And that's a very natural way to do things. So this was my way of being able to remind us why it is that we were doing the 9 yanas, why we're learning about the 9 yanas, the 9 vehicles. So, any questions or comments about anything that I just said? Okay, so you're all perfectly stable in that, right? Okay. All right, so then to bring us to a little bit of a review, the yanas are the vehicles. We first talked about the path of renunciation, the vehicles that are moving along the pathway of renunciation, which was the Hinayana path and the beginning of the Mahayana path. And then we go to the path of purification, where we're going through the yana of the Kriya Tantra and the Charya Tantra and the Yoga Tantra. That's what we've been talking about these past number of weeks, the Yoga Tantra. And this is the path of purification. So now we're getting in that middle part here, and we're beginning to to understand more things. We'll be able to have a little bit more critical thinking and so on. And then we enter into the path of transformation, where we're bringing this in and we can see the changes that we're going through. We can recognize those changes that we're going through to help other beings and to help ourselves. And then finally, we get to the last of the yanas, which is the path of self-liberation. We haven't talked about that yet. We're saving that for next week. So we're still talking about this path of transformation. And last week, we did talk about the bodhisattvas. We talked about the 8 great bodhisattvas, because it's here where we learn that we have these bodhisattva powers, abilities within ourselves that maybe we haven't recognized as being these holy enlightened beings, that we have these qualities of being this holy enlightened being within ourselves. And it's these qualities that are helping us to transform. So with these 8 great bodhisattva traits or characteristics, that's what's helping us as a human being to move along the pathway to be able to get to the next level, to break through, to penetrate the next ceiling and ceilings after that, and so on like that. So what we need to do, so now, as we are breaking through those ceilings, become like Buddha fields. They become like pure lands. Buddha fields and pure lands are synonymous with each other. And what it kind of means is that there is an awakened one who has a particular activity, and with that has a particular retinue that all resides within a palace. So all this then becomes the Buddha land, or the Buddha field, or the pure land of a particular Buddha. And what we are doing is building our pure land. We're doing that. We're ultimately we're seeing that, we're building up these pieces and so on. And you can identify them as you go through your life of doing this in this particular life. And you can look back and you can say, oh, why I must have done these things, or it was done by other human beings, and I'm relating to that in the past, and that I have these things yet to do in the future, and so on. So by having these anthropomorphic, who look like us, meditational deities, helps us to wrap our feeble intellectual minds around these very, very, very subtle concepts. These Buddhas are not human in the respect that they have some kind of dominion or something like that over us, or that we will become a human Buddha in that way. It's much more subtle than that. There are human Buddhas who are alive right now, but to think of them as being finite becomes the problem, because the quality of being a Buddha, that is the most essential quality, is their spaciousness, that has no limitation, that has no conceptual value to it at all. There's no way to conceptualize what it is. But in order for us to be able to begin to wrap around that, we use these humanoid illustrations, images, to help us to understand. So there are statues, the artwork, the iconography, the paintings, and so on like that, are all there to help us. But they are not the finite expression of what these Buddhas are, and so on. These Buddhas are representative of wisdom. And we've been able to compartmentalize those wisdoms into sections in order that we can, begin to work on those, begin to bring those into our concept. So all this is part of the path of transformation. Because what happens is that we, as ordinary human beings, become more and more and more like those Buddhas. That's our goal. That's why we practice deity yoga, to become more of those Buddhas. So whether it's to become like first we would become like the Bodhisattva, Shenrezig, Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, Vajrapani. These were the Bodhisattvas that we talked about last week. And then from that, because they were part of their families, they go on to become the heads of the family, the Buddhas themselves, and so on. Any questions or comments? Please, if you have, just turn on your mic and speak right up. Okay. So now I'm going to screen share, because last time we talked about that there was a flow chart that was going to help us to understand this. So let me see here. If I go, if I go, yeah, maybe this makes it a little easier to read. Okay. All right. So now we've got a flow chart here. So all this starts with Samantabhadra. This is the Buddha Samantabhadra. And Buddha Samantabhadra and his consort Samantabhadri. Now, this is not literal. This is figurative, symbolic, to help us to understand. So Samantabhadra is like the skillful means, is like the heart, is like the essence of what all this is. The essence so pure that it hasn't been born, that it remains in this spacious quality and is not born, because to be born then means that it begins to take form, and confusions come out of that, and so on. Samantabhadri represents the body of that. So it's kind of like saying, if we were to look out at the sky, and we could look out into beyond our sky and look out into the space, it's kind of like looking at all the black would be all the Samantabhadri. This is the body of it's the spaciousness of all what the Buddha is, or what this awareness is of what Samantabhadri is. And Samantabhadra would be like the spaciousness, and Samantabhadri would be like all the planets and the stars and the galaxies and all that kind of stuff. So, but they're in a state of flux. They're constantly going from one thing to the next. It's in a state of flux in that it's all we could say one, but it's beyond the concept of one. All this is non-conceptual. So we're looking at this all symbolically. So Samantabhadra, in order for us, ordinary human beings, to be able to understand, there are these 5 families. And these 5 families then become what's called the Sambhogakaya. This is the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya is that truth body. The Sambhogakaya is the enjoyment body, the subtle enjoyment body. So here we have the 5 Buddha families. So there's the center family. If you remember, we were looking at the mandala that Michael was putting up last time. I don't have a handy picture of it right now, but there was the white center. That was the Buddha family. And then in the east was the blue family. That's called the Vajra family, the indestructible family. Then in the south is the Ratna family. This is the jewel family, like the earth family. And then the west was the red family. The jewel family is yellow. You can see that blue here. And then the red was in the west, and that's the Padma family. That's the family of fire. And then here's in the north was the green family. That's called the Karma family. So these five directional concepts are helping us to be able to create this image in our mind of this mandala that we have within ourselves and that we're developing. We're seeing that all these Buddhas have and so on. Then within each of those families is the father and the mother Buddhas. The father and the mother Buddhas. So we didn't talk about them last time. We're going to talk about it tonight. But we'll circle back to that. But now I just want to say that here is what we did talk about last time, were these bodhisattvas, the 8 great bodhisattvas. So in each of these families, here in the red family, for instance, are the 2, and here in the green family, here in the blue family, and the yellow family. And you can see the names of the bodhisattvas' spiritual sons and daughters. So, and these 8 great bodhisattvas are the perfections of being a human being, When we are able to transcend that humanness and liberate ourselves from being a human being, then we would be entering into what would be described as the Buddha realms, the 5 perfected Buddhas, the 5 perfection Buddhas, their families, or this is where they are. And they have, it's the father and mother images there. So in the center would be Varanchana and his consort Datvishvari. So now if you want to take, if you're not taking notes now, but you can take notes, and to remind ourselves, to give a little bit of understanding, Varanchana, one second, I got to get my paper correct here. So I got my notes so I don't speak wrong. Okay. So Varanchana, his name means he who is like the sun. Varanchana. So it's a Sanskrit name. He who is like the sun. He's got a Tibetan name. It's probably going to go in one ear and out the other, but it's Nampar Nangzad. And but it literally means the one who completely manifests. One who is like the sun, one who completely manifests. And then his consort, Datvishvari, is the natural purity of space. So she represents space, and he's representing the quality of that which is manifest. So like I was saying before, that those 2 concepts with Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri at the very top, they're like in a state of flux. And they're constantly moving back and forth in this. Here in this point of view, we're looking at this, that she is like the space and he is like the manifestation within that space. Then in the east family, the Vajra family, is Askobhya is the father, and Mamaki is the mother. Askobhya is, keep my papers from getting too mixed up. Askobhya here means immovable, who took the vow to Buddha to never feel disgust or anger towards any being, who is immovable, to be pure, the unshakable one, Askobhya. And this is in the Vajra family. The Vajra family is the indestructible family. So Ascobia's consort is Lokana, and Lokana is the natural purity. Is Mamaki, and Mamaki is the natural purity of the element water. Element water. So just let me go back and say this. Here with Varanchana, this is the space element. The blue is the water element. The yellow is the earth element. The red is the fire element, and the green is the wind element. So Mamaki, going back now to Mamaki, is the water element, the purity of the water element. So this unshakable one in this water and the water is cohesive. Everything is within the water. So this unshakable manifestation. So now we can spend a whole lot of time speaking about each one of these things. I'm trying to keep it simple so we can get through this in an evening time. Ratnasambhava now is in the yellow family, is the father, and Lokana is the mother. Ratna means jewel, a jewel, and Sambhava means born. So born in a jewel. So if you look at the earth as a jewel, that it is a jewel. And when we sit in meditation position, we visualize ourselves as a jewel sitting in the lotus. So Ratnasambhava is that lotus. And his consort Lokana is the earth element, is the earth element. Ratnasambhava means the jewel-born one, the source of preciousness is Ratnasambhava. Then we come over now to the red family, to the Padma family. Amitabha, and you probably have heard the name Amitabha before. Amitabha is the male Buddha, and his Amitabha means boundless light, infinite light, boundless infinite light. And his consort is Pandara, and Pandara is the natural purity of fire, that light. And then the last of the five is the green family, the karma family, is Amagoga Siddhi. And he is who unerringly achieves his goal. Amagoga Siddhi means unerringly achieves his goal, or one who accomplishes what is meaningful. He doesn't accomplish falsity, what is meaningful. And his consort is Tara, who is the natural purity of wind. Now, there's many different Taras. So Tara here is all these female Buddhas would be considered Taras. But here in particular, this is called Samaya Tara. Her full name would be Samaya Tara. So, but she represents the wind element. So, each of these Buddha families represents a wisdom that these bodhisattvas, the five or the eight bodhisattvas, the male and female brothers and sister bodhisattvas, which are our humanness, are leading up to this wisdom perfection. And each of these perfections is embodied by these Buddhas, which are, of course, within ourselves. So Varanchana is the all-pervading wisdom. So this Buddha family is the all-pervading wisdom that penetrates all things, all-pervading. In the same way that, at nighttime, when it's the middle of the night and everything is dark and you can't distinguish between shadows, everything is in a shadow because the earth at nighttime is in the shadow of the sun. All our light comes from the sun. But once the sun comes up, once the earth rotates around and is able to receive the light from the sun, now that sunlight penetrates even into shadows in places where you can't see the sun, but that light is creeping into all these different places that can't directly see the sun. So that's like the all-pervading light, the all-pervading wisdom that pervades everywhere, even though it does not directly see that light, the source of that light. Ascobia is the wisdom, the mirror-like wisdom. The mirror-like wisdom is like looking literally into a mirror. I'm just going to get out of this for a second. Excuse me a second here. So this mirror-like wisdom is like looking into a mirror. When you look into a mirror, you're not seeing an actual object. You're seeing the reflection of an object. So when we begin to realize that everything that we see is just a reflection of our mind's interpretation of what that object appears to be, but it is a composite of many things. That object is many different things. It's not any one thing. It is many things. So when we begin to view ourselves and begin to view everything around us as composite appearances, like looking into a mirror, then there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to attach to. There's nothing to have aversion toward, because it's just all composite. It's all just temporary stuff. It's all just a figment of our imagination, of our mind. Now, we agree or that we call these things certain things, and it has a relative temporary reality to it, but it is not a true reality. It is not the essence of reality. We talk about it as the emptiness, that we recognize the emptiness in this phenomenal nature. So it is all like mirror-like wisdom. So it takes mirror-like wisdom to be able to recognize that. So if you can stabilize that wisdom, you can say, oh, I have the wisdom of Ascobia. I see everything as being an appearance, as being phenomenal. So we can do it for periods of time. The Buddhas stabilize this. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'm going to go back to the screen share. Okay, so now Ratnasambhava and Lokana is the wisdom of equanimity. The wisdom of equanimity. Equanimity means the sameness, equality. All things are the same. This equanimity, that all things are the same. So there's nothing to feel as though we're inseparable from. That we are the essence of everything. Everything is the essence of us. This equanimity, this wisdom of equanimity. So this is different than the wisdom of mirror-like wisdom. Mirror-like wisdom is seeing all these appearances. The equanimity now is seeing all the composite parts, all the essence of all these composite things, and the energy in which they all abide as being all inseparable. So I think we're all familiar with the equation, Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, that energy equals the mass of the mass, taking a piece of mass and speeding it up to twice the speed of light, and then you have this energy. And there's an equation, there's an equality there. And it doesn't matter whether it's on the energy side or it's on the mass side. At that point, it's all the same. So that's what the wisdom of equanimity is being that sameness, being that equanimity, seeing no difference between energy and mass, energy and form. So then, now in the Padma family, the red family is Amitabha and Pantara, and this is the wisdom of discriminating awareness, the perfection of the wisdom of discriminating awareness. So what this means is as we approach this, we know what to focus on. The Buddha can focus all on it simultaneously. As we are approaching it, we can say, oh, I need to look at this now. I don't need to look at that. But then in another moment, it might be, oh, I need to look at this here. And right now I've been looking at that. I need to move that so I can look at this. Discriminating awareness. Be able to know what to be able to look at, the wisdom of discriminating awareness. Amitabha is the most accessible of these five Buddha families for us human beings. And Amitabha leads to the realization or the recognition of the other Buddhas, because it's from the wisdom of discriminating awareness that we can focus to be able to recognize those other Buddhas. The other ones are more abstract than discriminating awareness. We can relate to discriminating awareness a little bit easier than we can these others. So in many of the practices that we do, Amitabha is the focal point of our practice, because Amitabha leads to these other more abstract or subtle manifestations of awareness. So I know maybe this sounds a little bit like gobbledygook at this point, but it's these building blocks, you see, that we begin to build on, and these things start fitting together. And maybe you've experienced where some things that you've learned, a little bit are starting to come together. Well, now we're looking at it, you can look at it either as big or very small, but we're looking at more finer points of this that will all fit together at some point. So this wisdom of discriminating awareness is critical, is critical thinking in terms of being a human being. Okay. And then in the green family, the karma family is Amagoga Siddhi, and he represents the wisdom, the all-accomplishing wisdom. the all accomplishing wisdom. So that anything that needs to be, if we have everything is already pure. Everything is already there. Everything is already here. It's all within ourselves. It's all accomplished. And to recognize oneself as Amagog City is to recognize that. There's no need to have to go beyond. We are beyond. Beyond has no meaning anymore. We are that which is accomplished. So it's that activity of being accomplished that is a quality of the Buddha, like the other qualities that are these stable realizations of being awakened. Anybody got questions? So there's a lot more to this, of course. And what we're trying to recognize is that as human beings, we have the qualities of the 8 great bodhisattvas that are leading us, that through our being able to stabilize them, leads us to the threshold of becoming the Buddha. And we have to release, we have to liberate ourselves from any attachment or aversion to any wisdom notion that we are these things. We have to let these things go. We develop an understanding of these. We develop a recognition of these things in order that we may let them go. Because it's these things that are what it is to be a human being. And we have to recognize, we have to understand what it is to be a human being. And thank goodness that we have this ability to be a human being. And not just to be any human being, but to be a precious human being. When we talk about the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, that the first of those 4 thoughts that turn the mind is our precious human life, our precious human being, to be able to have this and so on. So as we are able to recognize that, we let that go, and then we cross over into becoming an awakened being. What does that mean in terms of being a human being? It's inexpressible. That's what we talk about as being non-conceptual. We just don't know. We can't say. We can experience it as a human being through the meditative process. We can experience that. And it has no color. It has no form. It has no sound. It has no taste. It has none of these qualities, none of these attributes and so on. It's all beyond that. And it goes beyond our mind that processes these mundane features of being a human being. But when we return as being a human being, when we have those moments of being a transcendent meditational deity like that, we have this, we abide in bliss. We abide in the awareness of emptiness. And we are able to be liberated. We're able to be free. And our whole life transforms now into the Buddha field. And we can stabilize that and we can control that. So we made the analogy many times that, we are like the architects of our lives. And then once we're born, then we become the engineer who has to constantly be tweaking our life. But when we become Buddha, or we become enlightened, when we become the awakened one, there's no need to tweak anymore from our point of view, from the human point of view, that it has reached a perfection state. What does that mean on the other side? We'd have to be a Buddha to know. Do we become the planet Seremus? Do we become the galaxy Zixiclan? Who knows? Is it beyond all that? Does it matter? The point is the freedom and the happiness that we enjoy in this life and that we bring to other beings. This is what is important to us now. Any comment? Everybody sufficiently blown away? So this is called the Sambhogagaya. This is the subtle enjoyment body of these meditational deities that we experience through our meditation and that we are having, intellectual conceptualization of. But then we can reach that threshold where we cross over and we go beyond that. And then we go into the Dharmakaya, which is the truth body. The truth body of of becoming a Buddha in this state. And we can do that. We catch glimpses of that over and over again. And what we're trying to do is to bring those glimpses together, make them more stable, make them broader, make them deeper, higher, and so on like that. And we're building on to our Buddha nature. But there is also the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya is the emanation body. And the emanation body is that Dharmakaya that has manifested as the Sambhogakaya, this intellectualization of what all this is in human form or as a human being, that there are human beings who are our teachers, who are talking to us in these terms so that we can gradually approach that Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya kind of like manifests into the Sambhogakaya and into the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya is the teacher. The Sambhogakaya is the teaching. So what does this have to do now? Coming back to the yanas that we've been talking about, coming back to this path of transformation, where you can see that this is the articulation of one human being to another human being, or a human being to themselves, to understand where we are with all this and to be able to create this path and maintain this path and stabilize this path, to be on there, to see that what we're doing there, how we got there, why we're there, and how we, and what the result is. Okay. Anybody want to take a short break? Anybody need a drink of water or stand up and stretch or whatever? Everybody ready for more? Carla, where do you live? She's giving us a tour.
My husband is in another meeting, so I don't want to interrupt. Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're in Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you up near Three Rivers?
Yes. Yes. It's actually, I used to go
you're
there.
you're part of
very
the
shortly.
Sangha, the Three Rivers Sangha.
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. So, so Kempo Chappelle has been your teacher for some time then, I suppose.
I just met him once.
Oh,
Once. Yeah. And then I disappeared. I disappeared. And then I'm slowly coming back
okay.
recently this year.
All right, well,
Yeah.
very good.
I wasn't ready.
I beg your pardon?
I wasn't ready.
You wasn't ready for this?
No, now I think I am. I don't know.
Oh, well, good. Well, we're going to start the new session, like I keep saying, next month. So I hope you stay with us for that, and maybe some of it you already understand, and some of it will help connect a few of the dots and so on. Okay. All right. So if we're all back together again. So now to get to the 9 yogas again, or the nine yanas again. So we left off, we were talking about the yoga tantra. The yoga means union, was bringing all this together. Then we get into the Mahayoga, the Maha Tantra, the Mahayoga. And this is, Maha means great. And union, yoga means union. So it's the great union. So that's why now we've been talking about the 8 great bodhisattvas and the 5 Buddha families, because what are we in union of but these deities that are symbolic of our true nature? So that's why all this comes to bear. And this is the entryway into what we refer to as the highest yoga tantra, highest yoga tantra. So this is the entrance into that. So through experiencing ourselves as, recognizing ourselves as the bodhisattvas, and then experiencing ourselves as the Buddhas through our meditation process, then we are affecting the transformation. So this takes time. It's trial and error for sure. It requires practice. It requires practice together, and it requires much more practice at home by yourself doing these practices, because that's where experiences really happen. You may have some kind of an epiphany or something when we're with people, but if you're with somebody, with a group for a day or a couple days or a week refuge or something like that, a week's retreat, you may not, there's a lot of things happening and you may not have that experience. But when you come back and you have just the solitude of being in your own space and being able to practice this, that's where transformation can really, really take place. So part of what we're doing is giving you encouragement to make those spaces available for yourself, to have a space within your home, or to go on retreats, or to, gather the understanding to be able to affect these changes, these transformations, and so on. So this Mahayoga is, we talk about that there is or some people would use this word magical, this magical display of the Dharmakaya. But this magic is really the union of that E equals MC squared, is when that energy and that mass, that energy, that spaciousness, and that mass of form come together. And then there is this magical display that can only be experienced. We see that magical display taking form in the phenomenal nature. We bring that back with us and we begin to recognize that that magical display, that this experience is happening all around us, but we didn't recognize it before. If you remember, we used the example that there's the ground, there's the path, and there's the result. The ground is where we start. We have all this, we got our body, and we got all these things, and we've got our knowledge, and we got our life, and all this kind of stuff. And from that ground, we say, oh, I want to get to enlightenment as the result. But for me to get there, I got to go along this pathway. I got to traverse this path. So I enter onto the path. And I go through all these transformations. I go through all these changes on the path. I assemble all these bits and pieces of knowledge and so on. And I create this big ball of wisdom or whatever. And then finally, I get to the result. I get to the fruition. I get to the enlightenment and realize, oh, it was on the ground the whole time. I just didn't recognize it. So it's a way of being able to reevaluate who we are, what we are as ordinary human beings. And we see that in the beginning, we think that we have an extraordinary, or that we have an ordinary mind, and that we're trying to get this extraordinary awareness, Then as we go through this whole process, we get to the extraordinary awareness. We realize, oh, that's the ordinary mind. That's the way I was meant to be. That's the natural state. That's the Dharmakaya. And it is the defiled mind of the confused human being. That's extraordinary. So with that comes great peace of mind, great simplicity, great happiness, great bliss. All this within the emptiness of recognizing that all this phenomenal nature are just my appearances, just my fabrications as human beings, and that we agree on this, but it's all just temporary. And there's no point in holding on to it, because what's beyond that is as far as who we are too. So this magical display is really our natural awareness. So we say that mind and matter is phenomenal and the magical display. So the mind being like the phenomenal nature and the matter being the phenomenal display, in which appearance and emptiness are indivisible. So all these pieces start fitting together. So another way of explaining this, other words to use this, is logic and experience. as we're putting all this stuff together, as we're going through this gradual methodology of examining all this, there's a logic to all this. And when we go through the path of purification, the Kriya Yoga and the Charya Yoga, it was all this logical stuff. And this is where the lamas will debate among themselves for lifetimes over all these, what we might seem to be these finite points about what it is to be a human being or what it is to be a Buddha or stuff like that. And, the result is, it's all the same, but so this logic gives way to experience. The experience, you can have that experience that just either, you can use the term penetrates or explodes all that logic. So the logic being the Yoga Tantra and the experience being the Mahayoga Tantra. The experience of being these deities, these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So there's a lot of detail that we could go into, and I don't think it's going to be beneficial. You're just hearing me say it, and some of these things, kind of go in one ear and out the other for me too, because like I just said, it's all just conceptualization of things that we have to liberate. And at some point when you become liberated, you say, well, why do I have to keep going back to that? But we do it for each other's sake, but we shouldn't do it for anything more than that. If it leads us in a direction, that's good. And then you get to the point of accomplishment and say, you know what? I'm done. I don't need to go past that. Garchen Rinpoche was just talking about that we don't attain anything. What we do is we lose. We lose the blockages. We lose the obscurations from that which we already have. I always talk about Ken Wilber, who said, look, we're already enlightened. And once we recognize it, it's beautiful, it's great. The problem is, the difficulty is having to lead an enlightened life. That's what's difficult. So there's much more, if you want to study these things as we go on, it might be years down the road before you study this. It might be your next lifetime you study these things, if you were to come back as the human being that you are now. But of course, that doesn't happen. But what you're doing is you're creating this energy force that manifests in the future, that affects others, that affects the rest of humanity or human beings or space, whatever you wish to call it. That we're becoming part of that. I like to think that what we're doing is we're creating this Sangha family that when we each die, when we drop our body, our physical body and our intellect goes with us, our memory, all that, but our spirituality continues and goes to the Buddha, goes to the awakened one, whomever has been our meditational deity. And then we all kind of coalesce in that. We all coalesce as Maitreya or Amitabha or whatever. So it's a way of not holding on to who we are, but at the same time giving us a notion that we are part of something that is inexpressible. So there is something that helps us to understand some of these points. It's called the four nails, like a nail that you hammer. You know, the four nails that hammer down some ideas, some concepts. This is the four nails that secure the life force of the practice, that secure the life force of the practice. So the first is that all appearances is the deity. All appearance as the deity. All this stuff that, you know, is like a mirror, that's all the deity. That's all this phenomenal nature. This concentration on the deity. Then the second is the sound as the mantra. That all sound is as the mantra. The essence is the mind protection. So we talk about that. May my mind be, may all that I hear be the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, or whatever mantra it is that you resonate with. That all sound is the sound of the mantra, and the mantra means a mind protection. So this nail, all appearances are the deity, all sound is the sound of the deity. And the third one is activity of emanation and absorption. That all activity is an emanation and absorption. Is an emanation and absorption. So what does that mean? Emanating, that light is going out, but also that light is being absorbed at the same time, spontaneously. So this dualistic nature becomes two sides of the same hand. That there is this luminosity, there is this emanation, but simultaneously there is this absorption. And the fourth one is that all this is the unchanging wisdom mind, the unchanging wisdom mind of being a human being. And sometimes we'll say, this is the mind of the Buddha, the mind of the enlightened one, the mind of the awakened one. And that is a point of view. That's a human point of view. But through our experience, we realize that there is this unchanging natural bliss. And to that is what we aspire. And call it whatever you will. But when it's ignited within our heart center, and to use that term ignited, it's just a relative term of showing a way of that has been recognized. And it becomes a part of the life force. So these four nails, you know, are showing the human aspects of this transcendence, of this awakened wisdom, this awakened quality, however you wish to express it. So for tonight, that's it for me. I'll answer any question I can, but I think that's good.
What book are you reading from? Is that a book?
I've got half a dozen books here in front of me. You know, so I got a bunch of notes. You know, one of the books I love that's been very, very helpful is this book here, The Encyclopedia of Eastern Philosophy and Religion, from Shambhala. This is really, really good. And another thing here I've got is from Alak, A-L-A-K, Zenkar, Z-E-N-K-A-R, Rinpoche, who articulated the nine yanas, created a very good framework on which to hang a lot of what we've been talking about here. But you can, Google's gotten really, really good. So you can, go and look at, what's it called, Rigpa Ricky and some of these other groups and so on, really have some really good things. So you can, with a fair amount of confidence, you can go and explore that.
Lance, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Sorry to be late, everyone. Hello. I've been grappling a little bit with the Buddhist concept of non-self,
Okay.
because if as Shakespeare said, if you prick me, I bleed. You don't bleed. If I have money or possessions, I have them. Someone else doesn't have them. So at face value, with our limited, unenlightened view, it's hard to get my mind around that. Do you have any advice for someone who's trying to better understand that truth of non-self? Or perhaps I'm misunderstanding it completely.
Say it again.
Yeah, to all appearances, we're separate beings. We're very separate as we go about our life on Earth. But the concept of non-self says that we really don't exist as separate beings. Is that an accurate understanding of it?
Well, yeah, and that's the point of the Mahayana. That's in the Mahayana, that's where that becomes introduced. Before that, it's a selfish, liberation. It's a selfish motivation to attain, whatever they call enlightenment and so on. But when we realize through the Mahayana, through the middle way, that we are all connected, that we are all spiritual beings, all connected, and that what hurts you hurts me, what makes me happy makes you happy, what makes you happy makes me happy, and so on like that. And that all of that in its essence is all contrived from the very beginning. That what we are experiencing is just a phenomenal nature that as human beings, we can't really explain it. We experience it, but do we hold on to it? And why do we hold on to it? Because of our ego. But can we now go through life saying, well, I don't know, and be satisfied in that, and be happy in that? And feel, and so when somebody asks you, about these different things, and you say, well, I really don't know, but this is the way I kind of, try and understand it, but ultimately it's just a relative way of understanding it. So that's the technique that we use to develop a selflessness awareness and stabilize that by seeing when the ego creeps in, when the I, me, mind creeps in. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. And again, it reminds me of that book that you recommended, The White Hole in Time, because there's so much in there about ego and how all this worry and fear and anxiety is all a product of the ego mind, the ego self.
That's right. Yes. So our mind is creating all this stuff. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Lance,
Yes.
when this is over, I would like to ask you a question, but I'd like to ask you a question sometime, like when you have time if you do, to talk where I could get some advice from you, but it sort of requires an explanation. And so I wondered if I could set up some time to talk to you, or someone, if you could recommend someone far along the path to talk to.
Sure.
Because it's complicated, but the question is simple, but the precepts before it are complicated, and I'm a little confused.
Okay. Can you stay a little bit later
Yes.
after we finish tonight? And we can do that? Okay. We can at least set up a time.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, sure. So there's another book that is really good called Glimpse After Glimpse. You can see this. This is by Sogyal Rinpoche. And this is a great book. And each page is a day of the year. So I just opened up and it's January 28th. And so one page is maybe a paragraph, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, but nothing more than that. And what it is a compilation of affirmations, or maybe discoveries, or maybe pointing out instructions, something that is brought together by this great Rinpoche called Sogyal Rinpoche. And so this was very, very helpful, and it continues to be very helpful for many people. I read this every single day for 6 years, where I would read that particular day and I would read the previous day. In the beginning, I started reading the future days, but I didn't like that because I didn't like getting, well, I can't do that because, I didn't want to get superstitious. But nevertheless, you do what you want. But this thing is really, really great. So Sogyal Rinpoche, Sogyal, and I know you can get this on Amazon, and is a wonderful book. Everybody who's ever gotten this has always been very, very happy to have it. So accumulating your library is part of your mandala, is part of your retinue. So, if you come to Dharma Surya, we've got a lending library. We've got a book, we've got a bookstore where there's brand new books that you can purchase. But we've got a lending library downstairs that if you want to keep the book, you can make a donation, is fine, and take the book. If you want to just keep it for a while, bring the book back, that's okay too, whatever. But there's some really wonderful, magnificent books that are there. And so, just get something that seems interesting to you and dig in. And you might find that it opens up some doors that you might not have known were there.
I have a question about books.
Yes, B.
So I think all of what you're teaching us and what we've been learning is of the Drikung Kagyu lineage, right?
No, not necessarily. It's shared by all the lineages, but it's not exclusively Drikung Kagyu. None of it is exclusively Drikung Kagyu.
Okay, so like learning. I know that Gary earlier mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'm a big fan of Thich Nhat Hanh, but that's sort of a different thing than what we're learning.
No, it's based on the same thing. He's Pure Land. He's middle way Mahayana, but many of the things that he is reflecting upon, that he's talking about, are wisdom, wisdom awarenesses that he has had through his practice and so on. I don't know a whole lot about him, so I don't know, what practices he's really engaged in, but no, all this, it cross-pollinates with each other.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The our lineage, the Kagyu lineage is the name of the lineage, the Kagyu lineage. And the Kagyu lineage is called the lineage of the yogis. The other side, the Galupa lineage is the lineage of the Dalai Lama. And that's the biggest lineage in Tibet today. And they're much more scholarly than the Kagyu lineage. The Kagyu lineage tends to be, the yogis that go off in long retreats and so on like that. The Shakya lineage, like the Kagyu lineage. And both of them, they kind of say that you got to be a monastic to really to be liberated. But the Kagyu lineage and the Nyingma lineage, which is the lineage of the ancients, and the Nyingma, they both say it doesn't matter whether you're a monastic or a layperson. The monastic has certain advantages to it, just like being a layperson has certain advantages, but they also have certain, drawbacks to it as well. So the Drikung is the name of the village that the founder of our lineage founded his monastery in Tibet. So Drikung is the village of the village of the Kagyu lineage. So that's how you get those names. But all the teachings are basically they're all the same. They may have a slightly different approach, maybe a little bit of a different point of view from time to time, but they're all the same. And many of these prayers that we recite are 2,000 years old.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome. Okay. So everybody else is good? Okay. All right, well then let's call it an early night and we'll do our dedication prayers. If you're thinking of anything that you want to talk about, just let me know. You can call me or text or email, whatever. We'll see each other again next week and we'll finish up with the next things. I do want to ask you though, let me get the calendar here. So if I look here, so next week is the 25th, then we finish there. Can everybody start on August 1st for the next session round? Or do you want to start on August 8th, take an extra week off? Does anybody have an opinion?
I can
Okay.
start whenever.
What's that?
I can start whenever.
Okay. All right, well then let's keep the inertia going. And we'll start on August 1st. And of course, it'll be recorded. So if we miss it or something, you'll be able to catch it up. And we'll start on August 1st then with the story of the life of the Buddha. It's not, complete, but it will give you a fundamental, really good basis understanding of who the Buddha, the historical Buddha was and continues to be. So that'll be good. If you haven't heard that before, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. If you've heard it before, I'm sure you'll enjoy hearing it again. And there's always time for discussion. So if you have points that you want to raise, we welcome that. So that first session will be on its own. And then after that, then August 8th will begin the 8-week cycle. So we can spend as much time speaking about those fundamentals as we can. And incorporated in that, those 8 weeks, we're going to develop a basic meditation practice. So we're going to learn some academics and we're going to learn some meditation technique. So So hopefully that'll help your practices. That'll be very good. Okay, so let's turn to page, turn to page 18, and we'll continue. So last week, I gave an explanation of these 18, 19, and 20, and this time we'll recite going through there, and I'll give a little bit of an explanation on the dedication prayer, page 21 and 22. I'll give that explanation tonight. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa. Let me encourage everybody to recite out loud along with me. Turn your microphones off so we don't feed back. But it's part of our practice is based on the idea of really engaging our physical body. And that means our breath, our lungs, our vocal cords, thinking about what it is that we're doing. And those two are like a key that opens up our heart center. So it's important to do this. It's part of the practice. Okay. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharmalor Gampopa, Pagmadrupa, and Lordri Kumpa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. A little bit of water. The dedication prayer by Lord Jigdan Sumgun, who is the founder of the Drikung Kagyu lineage. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. So the yidams are our meditational deities. So the 8 great bodhisattvas, the 5 Buddha families, and associated deities, we can take those to be our yidam. Our yidam is the deity that we kind of concentrate on, and through the lens of that particular deity, that yidam, is we experience all the other deities. So we could try and do all the different deities, but that's a lot. You can just pick one. But then you can pick one to be your yidam for some period of time, maybe 6 months or maybe a year, 2 years, whatever. And then you move on to another one. And it doesn't mean that you lost the one that you started with. You just begin to have more yidams onto your Buddha field, onto your palace, onto your tree. So that's the Yidam, is the meditational deity. Buddhist Bodhisattvas, yogins and yoginis. The yogis are us, the males, and the yoginis are the females, practitioners. Yoga means union, those who are in union. So they are practitioners who are really committed practitioners. And the dakinis are like the skyfarers, they're called. And in many ways, they might be like the Western angels that we hear about, you know, those who are talking to us and guiding us and helping us and so on. But they have some different qualities about them and so on. So the dakinis are there to help us and to guide us. And they are in most cases, enlightened beings themselves. And will, as your career goes on, you'll learn more and more about dakinis. And the 10 directions. The 10 directions are the 4 cardinal directions of the compass: east, south, west, and north. And then the intermediate directions: southeast, southwest, northwest, northeast. That's 8 altogether. And then up and down. Those are the 10 directions. So when you visualize the 10 directions, you're visualizing really this sphere, that energy, this light, this wisdom, these prayers, these blessings are going in all directions simultaneously. Those are the 10 directions. Please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. So the 3 times are the past, present, and future. Samsara and nirvana. Samsara is the ocean of suffering. The ocean of suffering that we are in the midst of, all this suffering. And nirvana is the liberation from that ocean of suffering. However, it's like 2 sides of the same hand, and they both are phenomenal. They both are subject to suffering. That in nirvana, we can lose control and we can fall back into samsara. So, so samsara and nirvana, the innate root of virtue and the innate root of virtue. The innate root of virtue is that true nature, true nature that we all have, that Buddha nature that we all have, that we don't necessarily recognize. And it's our job, our task to uncover that, to remove the obstacles. Not result in the 8 worldly concerns. We talk a lot about this in the first couple of weeks of Buddhism 101, which are the 8 worldly concerns: pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace, gain and loss, and praise and blame. So we'll talk more about those. That these are things that we think about all the time and consumes us. And what we need to do is release ourselves from those thoughts. The 4 causes of samsara. 4 causes are not gathering the accumulations of wisdom and merit. If we are unaware of those things, we take them for granted. We don't accumulate wisdom and merit. The second is gathering the non-virtues. If we're gathering non-virtues, then we're not gathering virtues. And that keeps us in samsara. That keeps us in suffering. The next one is creating obstacles to others' creation of virtue. If we interfere with other beings who are trying to perfect themselves, then that is a reason to keep ourselves in samsara. And then not dedicating virtue. When we do good things, we should not take pride in that for ourselves. We should dedicate that virtue for the enlightenment of others. So those four things are the things that are the four causes of samsara, the ocean of suffering. So it says, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the four causes of samsara or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. So a Shravaka is a hearer, the arhats, and the Pratyeka Buddha are the solitary realizers. And they are on the path. They are on the path. They're good people, but they are selfishly holding enlightenment for themselves. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. So all mother sentient beings are those that have a mind, have react to stimuli, have a birth, have death, and so on. And we think of all these beings as being our mother. We don't know who our mothers were in past lives. We don't know who they'll be in the future. But if we regard everyone as our mother, and if we have great love and compassion for our mother and treat everybody that way, then that's a huge step in being virtuous. Especially those enemies who hate me and mine, misleading Mars. The Mars are the demons, and the demons are within ourselves. The demons that speak to us, that we listen, our own personal demons that cause us to do the negative things that we might do, the non-virtuous things that we do. It's us doing it, but we refer to them as our personal demons or our Mars. And the hordes of demons, those hordes of demons that are there. Experience happiness, be separated from suffering, swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Buddhahood. Buddhahood and enlightenment are synonymous. And the awakened one. The awakened one is the literal translation of the Sanskrit word Buddha, awakened one. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. These are the 5 poisons that make up the 84,000 emotions. So we'll talk about these in Buddhism 101. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for a moment. So these are the attachments that we create for ourselves, and the aversions that we create for ourselves, and that become parts of our personality, our identity, and so on, that we hold on to. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. My mind stream, my little mind, and my big mind, that mind stream that are separated, but we are trying to bring them together. And that the blockages that are created in the little mind are eliminated from blocking up our big mind. So our mind stream is moistened, is opened up by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. Bodhicitta are the 4 vast immeasurables, are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So these are the 4 qualities, the 4 vast qualities of all the enlightened ones. May I become equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. The Mahamudra is the great seal, the great position, the great mind, the great being of Buddhahood, the mind and the expression of Buddhahood. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. We don't want to be tormented when we die. When we die is one of the great gifts that we give ourselves. And then we need to be in control. We want to be in control of our death as much as we possibly can. And consider that and be prepared for that, because death can happen at any time. And death is a point when we are crossing over from this waking consciousness into the consciousness of reality. This is one part of reality. And then the other part of reality is that other side of what we might call this waking consciousness. So we need to be in control of that. So we need to recognize what that means. So we talk about that, we have practices for that and so on. And so our meditation practices are rehearsal for that. Letting go of our physical body, letting go of our intellectual mind, and releasing our spiritual body. So may the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I have a good attitude when I'm dying. May I not be angry. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not be ignorant of karma and forget about karma and know that whatever I'm taking with me is only that which is in my true self, in my alaya consciousness. And if I'm taking my alaya consciousness with me, I want that to be pure. We talk about that. May I not be confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I not put myself in situations where I might die at a time that I would consider to be premature. I wouldn't want to die in an accident or by injury or by someone's taking, killing me, being in a wrong place at a wrong time or something like that. So may I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. When we say this, we should smile. We should think about that our life, our death should be a time that we welcome. That not only are we being liberated from this ocean of suffering and so on, but that we are totally prepared for that, and that it will be one of bliss and of emptiness, and not attachment or fear or anything like that. So our practices are helping us to develop that. So we should be smiling when we say that. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such. The mind as such, the true mind, the open mind, the free mind, the fearless mind, the mind of the awakened ones. And the pervading clarity of the Dharmata. The Dharmata is another way of saying this phenomenal nature, but the phenomenal nature in the light of wisdom. Not in the darkness of confusion. So then, may I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra, the enlightened mind, at the time of death or in the bardo. So if I can do it now, great. If I can do it at the time of my death, okay, that's good. Or if I have to, if I'm left to have to do it in the bardo of reality, then hopefully I'll be able to do that. So a lot of our teachings, a lot of the ceremonies and things that we do are developing the potential for that to happen. So that is the dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgön. So thank you all very much for staying, and have a good week, and we'll see you again. Next weekend, we'll be at Dharma Surya doing practice, Saturday in the morning and all through the day, and Sunday in the morning time. And so everybody's welcome to come. Khenpo Tupsang is there, and he's reading from the Kangyur. it's like the Gospels of the Buddha, and there are English translations that you can read there as well if you don't read Tibetan. So this is done every year. So it's a special time if you can be there. So and it'll be there for the next 4 weeks. So thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, Hatley.
You.
Nance, oh, hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom. Yes, Hatley.
I just, first of all, I want to thank you for all of your efforts to teach and be such a wise and wonderful teacher.
Oh, well, thank you. Flattery
and
will get you everywhere.
I'm just so grateful to you for all the dedication that you give to people on the path that are either new or experienced or both.